Hey everyone, welcome to the fourth video in my tutorials on Blender. I'm actually going to break the fourth one into two parts because there's actually a lot to cover. So load up the file we created in the third tutorial. If you didn't save it, just hit Shift-C to center, Control period on the numpad, Shift-A to bring up the menu to add a monkey. First thing we're going to do is you can hit plus here to bring up the object tools. Or you can just hit T on the keyboard. Select your monkey and hit Tab. That takes you into edit mode, which I'll talk about in a very short time. But for now, just hit A to select all and hit Smooth. Now when you do that and you hit Tab again to go out of edit mode, you can see that the monkey looks a little bit smoother than it did before. I'll hit 1 to go into front view. Now we're going to go to the Modifiers tab here. And I'm going to do something, but I'm going to explain it in a later video. So I added a subdivision modifier, subsurf, which was down here. Change the view to 2. Now our monkey looks quite a bit better. Again, I'll explain what that is in a later video. Now the first thing I'm going to talk about is duplicating an object, and it's easy to do. Just Shift-D. Shift-D. Very simple. Now let's talk about edit mode. So edit mode is the mode that you will go into, and you hit Tab to edit mode to do your editing. So let's go back up to the modifiers panel for a second and click this button right here, the apply modifier to editing cage. Just do this. You can see now that the grid is contoured to the mesh as opposed to when it's off, it sort of looks a little boxier. I like to leave that on. So now I'm in this window, and this is where I can grab things and move things around and mold things and sculpt things. One of the things you'll notice is I can actually see the vertices at the back of the monkey's head. And these dots are called vertices. I'll explain that in just a second. The way to shut that off is this button right here. If you click it, you notice now I can't see the back of the monkey. If you click it again, I can. This will come in really handy later when I go to when I start to select vertices and lines and faces. So just be aware that it's there. Now the other key that's important here is the Z key. So if I hit Z, it goes transparent, allows you to sort of see through the mesh. And you'll notice when you hit Z that the key that was available to turn off the visible selection is disabled. I like to work in this mode, but I do switch it over once in a while to if I need to look through something. You can also go to this menu here, and you can select various options: wireframe and bounding box, which looks terrible. So Z basically takes you between wireframe and solid. There's also a textured version, which I don't use very often unless I'm actually using textures. So now let's talk a little bit about the vertices, lines, and faces. So a mesh is made up of these dots, and this dot is called a vertex, and multiple dots are called vertices. And a dot is just a point in space that has an X, Y, and Z location. Now, if you select two dots, and you can do that by holding down the Shift key, you have what's called a line, and you can actually go down here and determine what you want to select by. So if I click select by line, hold down the Shift key, you can see I can select lines instead of vertices. I rarely use this. I usually use vertices or faces. So 4 dots, if you connect 3 dots or 4 dots together, you have a face. So I'm going to go back to vertices. I'm going to select one vertices and hit Shift D to duplicate it. E to extrude. I'll talk about extrude later. And I'll duplicate this. E to extrude. Now, if I fill in the line here, okay, I have 3 points. If I fill it in here, I have 4 points. You can turn any 3 points or 4 points that are connected can become a face. So let me just select them, go down to Mesh, Faces, Make Edge Face. And now that has become a face. If I go into Face Select mode here, you can see that that's a face, just like these. This, on the other hand, is not. If I go to Lines or Vertices, so it's 4 lines, or 4 vertices. But if I select all 4, and go back down here to faces, make it, or I can just hit F, obviously, There you go. So one of the reasons why I'm talking about this is you always want to create, even though you can create faces with 3 vertices, you always want to do it with 4 if possible. And the reason why is when you subdivide 3 vertices, which I'll talk a little bit about, it makes triangles. If you do it with 4, it makes proper squares. And 4-point faces subdivide much better than 3-point. It's just a rule of thumb that most modelers follow, and I recommend that you try to stay with 4-point whenever possible. Just going to delete that. Delete this as well. So now that we know that we have vertices, lines, and faces, I'm going to talk a little bit about the snap menu. To get the snap menu, you hit Shift S. I use this all the time. So for example, I have a vertice selected. I can say snap cursor to selected. And now the cursor is right where the vertice is. It looks like it's hovering above it because we have this turned on. But you notice if I turn it off, it's snapped right to this vertex. Now the other thing you can do with it is you can select the item here. I'll left click to move my cursor. And if I hit Shift S again, I can say selection to cursor. And that moves my vertices up to where my cursor is. So I'm going to be using this quite a bit in future videos, but one of the things that it's really good for is finding the spot between 2 items, for example. So let's say I have this vertices and it's all over wrong and it's not where I want it to be. I want it to be directly between these 2 vertices. What I can do is I can select these 2 vertices and hit Shift S, snap cursor to selected. And what it's doing there is it's taking the midpoint between these 2, because right now these are the 2 things that are selected. Then I can take this point and I can say snap the selection to cursor, and now the vertices is directly in the middle of these 2. I can move it up a little bit and it's exactly where I wanted it to be again. So like I said, I use that all the time to find the center of, if I deleted this vertex, I got a big hole here now. So if I select these 2, Shift snap selection to cursor, snap cursor to selected, now there's perfect dead center of where I would want all of these vertices to intersect. So if I select it here and hit F to create a face, subdivide it, which essentially means cut it in 2. Now I can select these 4, make a face, so on, and then when I'm happy with the face, I can snap that selection to the cursor so that I know it'll be right in the middle again when I create these 4 faces here and here. So I know that dot's exactly in the middle of all of those. I'll be using the snap menu all over the place later on, but this is just sort of a brief look at it. Now to select everything, you hit A, but I'm in edit mode now, so if I got to edit mode and I hit A, it selects everything on the page, including the camera and the light. If I go back into edit mode, I'll hit A to unselect everything. I go back in edit mode, it only selects everything. It only selects everything that's in edit mode right now. And so like I said, you can shift select multiple items, whether it be faces or vertices. Now another way that you can select things is using the B, pressing B. That allows you to select a box. Now you'll notice that when I selected it, it didn't select the back vertices. And that goes back to this here. If I shut this, I turn this off and then I hit B and select, now it's selected it. If I'll right click on one vertices to deselect everything, and then if I turn this back on and I hit B, you can see it's not selected. Now that can cause you problems sometimes because I'll go and select something and I'll be like, okay, I just want to move this down and I think everything's looking good, and then I'll go back and look and the back part of it wasn't moved as well. That's not what I want. Now the other way that you can select vertices is with C. C will give you this circle thing, and you just left click your mouse button to select. If you click the middle mouse button, you'll deselect. And the same applies for front to back here. If I select here and I go to this side, it didn't select everything. If I turn this off and I do this, now it's selecting on both sides, as you can see. So the 2 main ways to select are the box with B and C. Use the middle mouse button to make it bigger or smaller. And don't forget to mind this setting here so that if you're doing it, say in the front, just realize that the back won't get selected. So that's it for the first part of the fourth tutorial. I'll see you in the second one.